I thought I was done with Secret Invasion, but you know what they say.
Even when I'm out, I'm in.
And it's largely because the director can't keep his mouth shut. Every time he does an interview, he says something that makes the situation worse. Whether that be talking about how he doesn't read reviews because for him, storytelling work is like a dialogue with the audience. Except in this case, it's where the audience is only saying one thing.
Have you lost your reptilian-ass mind?
And it is interesting how you think you can ever have a dialogue with the audience when you don't even read their reviews. That's not a dialogue, that's speaking to a brick wall. But the interesting thing is, not only does this interview and many others get worse, but there's one main reason for it as far as I can tell. Given that we've got the actors and the writers striking because they only earn $1,082 a day.
Starvation wages.
There isn't actually anyone else to do publicity for the show, but the Directors Guild made a deal with Hollywood early on, which leaves Ali Selim as the only one who can advertise Secret Invasion. I'd say for better or for worse, but let's face it, it's for worse. Costing $212 million, it was always going to be an uphill struggle, but especially when you see what's on the screen, it just makes you think, where on earth did all that money go? But don't worry about Salem, he doesn't feel bad about those mixed reviews, and mixed is actually a very generous spin on the situation here. Early on, the final episode got 8%, but right from the start of the series, Secret Invasion already had low viewership compared to everything else except Miss Marvel. And while the series opened at 55% from the critics, many of those never came back to update their reviews, and the finale actually sank all the way down to 7%. In fact, as you can see at the bottom, the only people to give it a fresh score was IGN. Now, I am a bit surprised by this, because IGN wrote an entire article about how Secret Invasion ruined Nick Fury's first leading role in the MCU, and in fact, I was so surprised that IGN would review anything in a negative light. I even tweeted out that even IGN is going after them, and I didn't think their rating scale went below a 7. And at that point, I had no idea that they had reviewed Secret Invasion final episode with a 7 out of 10. Look, either we live in a simulation or IGN are very predictable shills. Can you imagine writing an article going, "You've just ruined Nick Fury's first leading role. 7 out of 10, congratulations, mate." If 5 is average, 7 has to be good at the very least. Not that you'd know that from their article, which even in the first paragraph starts, "It's fair to say that we should stop talking about superhero fatigue and focus on the real problem, Marvel's creative funk. If there's one thing to be gained from that dour, messy, and ultimately pointless show that was relentlessly promoted as an event series, it's that the streaming TV arm of the MCU is in dire need of a rethink." 7 out of 10, congratulations, can't wait to see the next one. When it comes to the source material, it wasn't perfect, but it was wildly compelling and ambitious. Neither of those words can be used with any accuracy to describe the televised adaptation. 7 out of 10. Come on, Disney, maybe you just want to get all your shills in a row here. They can't even decide for themselves. But then you get the almost flippant attitude that the director himself takes to the success of his $212 million series. Oh, you know, if you had unanimously good reviews, every movie would gross $10 million trillion, right? I mean, yes. If everybody likes a series, then everyone would go and watch a series. What's your point? Because I do think that this review is interesting, because unlike a lot of other people, he's not actually attacking the fans in any way, no. Instead, I think he shows something very different. Something which I think is all too common in Hollywood, and likely the cause of many of the issues. Because he gives some vague answers about, well, different people like different things, and if they don't like it, they're going to review it negatively. Yes, that's how a review system works. But then we get to the meat of his quote when he says, "I don't know, is it our job to fulfill their expectations?" I have to think, well, what are your expectations? Because a lot of people's will be, "I just want a fun show." But then he says, "Is it our job to fulfill their expectations or to tell the story that we're telling?" It's a tricky thing. I would love it if everybody loved it, but I also don't have that expectation myself, so I feel great about the response to it. He feels great about a mixed series of reviews because he never really expected everyone to like it anyway. Not only does that seem like massive cope, there are varying degrees of not everybody will like it, and if you're weighing it at 7%, with even IGN going, you would think Fury was bedridden and in need of 24-hour care the way the scripts and director Ali Selim portrayed Fury, maybe you've got a bit too far. But in his mind, he can't go too far because the audience doesn't actually factor into what he thinks at all. He's like, yeah, okay, I'm fine with the reviews, I don't really care if they like it, because he's not sure if it's his job to fulfill their expectations, to entertain them. No, his job is to tell the story he's telling, which comes from the same basic attitude that so many in Hollywood have. It's all because I'm an artist. Now, the interesting thing about what he's done and what I'm doing right now is there isn't actually any difference. I filmed, recorded, set up the camera, edited the footage together to tell a story to you right now. So the only thing that separates Secret Invasion being art to this video not being is that I'm ever so slightly less pretentious. But that's also not the excuse that he thinks it is. Even if you consider him an artist and you can't actually impose on his artistic vision, well, people didn't like his artistic vision. It got 7%, cost $212 million and lost money. So if he's an artist who can't be critiqued, changed, and is unwilling to change, well, what's the point of him?
What you least expect that you're going to want to see is Thor going through a midlife crisis.
This is a business, not your local art class. The only point is to entertain the audience and make money, and if you can't do that, then Disney need to get somebody who will. Is it your job to fulfill expectations or to tell the story you're telling? You can tell the story you want to tell, but if it's not one the audience want to hear, I wouldn't expect to tell one twice. And what this attitude is, at the end of the day, is just self-importance. I, as the director, as the artist, am more important than the audience. My artistic vision is more important than the audience. And we've seen this before, where the people in charge of the show get too big for their boots and think they are the reason why the audience are there in the first place. Even on The Witcher, we've got The Witcher star isn't worried about Liam Hemsworth replacing Henry Cavill.
Just seems like you two are a lot alike. You're both literal geniuses.
Presumably because one of the monsters in the show have scooped their brain out through their nose. No, the series will be okay when Liam Hemsworth appears. After all, it's not as if Henry Cavill was in the series much anyway. Can you miss something that was never really there? Yes. Actually, as it happens, yes you can. With The Witcher 3's final 2 episodes being the lowest rated ever. Because the picture summarizes why anybody was watching that show in the first place, and he's not there anymore. Is it our job to fulfill their expectations, or should we just do the story that we're telling? Do you think the creators of The Witcher read the reviews and care about them? Or do you think that once they make their trash and put it out on the screen, well, that's their half of the dialogue done? As long as we can convince our paymasters to give us more money, does it really matter what those peasants over there think? IGN said that the story revolves around Fury breaking a promise when it comes down to territory, but the blip is certainly a worthy excuse for not keeping one's word. The problem with the story that you're telling, Mr. Selim, is, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe this dialogue that you wanted to have with the audience would have been more beneficial if they'd been involved in the creative process to go, this doesn't make any sense. Because I don't know your creative process, I don't know what you do inside your company, but you need to get somebody who has the testicular fortitude to start telling you that your stuff is crap while you're making it, so you have time to fix it. And you'd have to make them not able to be fired as well, because they would simultaneously become the most hated and the most profitable person in your company. At the end of the series, Fury is back where he began, hiding in Saber, while the Skrulls who helped him rise up the ranks in S.H.I.E.L.D. are now worse off than before his return. What a total mess. 7 out of 10. So when you look at the story that the director wanted to tell, it seems to be largely based around himself. And I think this is a standard trend in Hollywood. Lots of people, lots of egos, everyone thinks they're the most important people in the world. Don't worry, The Witch will be fine without Henry Cavill, because the audience didn't really want him. I'm here, I'm enough. We haven't listened to the audience, so we don't actually know what they want, nor do we care. I don't need to listen to them, I know I'm the real drawer of this series. And that's how you get things like self-inserts, which is interesting when you hear the director talk about Secret Invasion and the story itself, where he says, I feel proud to have been part of telling the story of Nick Fury. It's profoundly disappointing that this is the starring vehicle that Nick Fury was received in. He deserved better. 7 out of 10. No, he comments about how this is surprising for people. And Marvel say that viewers have watched Nick Fury's rebirth. This is almost his origin story at 75. Nick Fury's origin story is a sad old man who can barely say one line to somebody without going on a bench and having a little cry. But then, you get into the why. That Sam and I talked a lot about his aging and worrying that you're losing your step or being told that.
Is Thor going through a midlife crisis?
Will Ufgood here is terrified that one day he'll be discovered as the aging, talentless hack that he really is.
You have the boy's magic.
No, this magic belongs to no boy.
He has many points in the show where he's losing his step. That's an understatement of the year.
Tell me something I don't know about the Skrulls that fled. They're here. Who's here?
And living through the blip, which in in many ways was much like lockdown for a lot of us, where we just disappeared and came back different and disorientated. Are you kind of getting where this story's coming from now? Does this sound like it's the story of Fury, or does it sound like it self-inserts from the actor and the director themselves? That they disappeared, came back different and disorientated. It was very much what life was like for them. How they're worrying about aging, they're worrying about losing their step, and what happens? Nick Fury does as well. Doesn't it make you think that self-inserts might not just be positive? Sure, if you're praised in Hollywood, told that you're empowered and the entire world is behind you, lifting you up into the universe, then you'll grow a massive ego and self-insert yourself as your own personal fantasy, your own personal hero to save the universe, who's never wrong, never has any flaws, and can't fail to save the world. And then, you've got the old guard. The directors and actors who came from Hollywood of a different time, before the current trend took over and people started calling them old, past it, and people who needed to be mothballed.
Feel a lot better if we were on the helicarrier.
That's been mothballed, a little bit like you should be.
They talk about how you've been aging and that you're losing your step. You're just not as good as what you're used to be. Everybody is telling you that. And so, that's what you write into the show. How is that not the plot of Secret Invasion? He even leaves at the end to make room to have somebody else take over his job, with a new hero in tow. What's the story that he's trying to tell? I can't help thinking it's the story of his own life, and possibly Sam's, when he says we had a lot of conversation about Sam's life, how he felt like he was an aging man, a man who grew up in volatile times. And is it a story about getting his mojo back? No. It's a story about finding purpose at this point in his life and finding new strength. We lived through this stuff, and I think in many ways that helped Sam through the process. Have you ever thought that people don't have media training or pre-written answers? How about this one at the end? It's my half of the dialogue with the audience, and now it's their turn to respond to my half of the dialogue. I view all storytelling work as a dialogue with the audience, and when the show is finished, that's my half of the dialogue. That's in an interview with Variety, and the first one was with Marvel. I just imagine he's thought of these answers before. But when someone's as old, past it, and mothballed as he is, then you can obviously understand why he'd have to. If Fury really is a self-insert, then it's gonna be a struggle to even get through one day. Although it is funny what you actually get to talk about when they say the director dissects the season finale and reacts to the mixed reviews, where it says that Selim was open to all critiques, largely because it seems like he doesn't listen to them. It says all reporters were instructed not to ask about AI in the interviews, which, considering that was your entire title sequence, oops, something tells me we won't be doing that again very soon. We find out that the scene that he pushed for and really enjoyed was where Nick Fury got with a giant green reptile monster creature at the end, releasing the sense of other in himself that had been a constraint or a prejudice. She was an ugly green alien creature, mate. That wasn't prejudging anything, that was judging what was visibly in front of you. Let's face it, if you're a giant green mutant creature that could literally turn into anything else, why wouldn't you just look like the most beautiful person on Earth? If anything, it should be insulting to Fury that you can't be bothered. You could make the perfect cosplay of anybody, and instead, you just want to look like the jolly green giant. Although it is funny when he calls it the last scene of the series, and they go, is it the season finale or the series finale? Yeah, I should say season, because I don't know anything about season 2. I have a feeling that you know about season 2. I mean, come on. With a budget of $212 million, that's about $30 million per percent, you know. He talks about the length of the episodes and how, is that your vision? He goes, vision is a really big word. It's not, mate, it's 6 letters. But I appreciate your using it. Because obviously he doesn't mean the size of the word, he means it's big and impactful. It sounds serious and important, and if anything, I do love the pompous. I'm an artist, you see, it's in our genes. But no, he says he made the episode shorter so there was a sense of ramping up to an explosive ending, which was basically the audience's collective sigh of relief as it ended. Now, one of my favourite points is how he tries to palm off the series finale using every single power in existence onto Kevin Feige. Because they ask, where did the idea come from? And he goes, well, simply put, Kevin Feige said, it's all fair game. And, you know, he probably did. But when someone goes, oh, you can do anything, they generally don't mean do everything. If I say you can use any ingredient to make a meal, I don't mean use everything in the world and stick it into one pot and see what happens. Doesn't matter if we make the new most powerful person in all of existence, we'll sort that out later. It's not like we'll get a scene season 2 anyway. We'll never have to worry about the problems we made. That's somebody else's problem. And then he says, I worked on this show for 28 months. 28 months. $212 million for 6 episodes. Dude, I know that the writers and the actors are on strike, but I didn't realize the directors had been on a go slow. After 28 months, you could have at least got somebody else to read the script and tell you it was trash. Get a second opinion. After all, he was told never to read the comics before making the show. Don't bother reading the source material. When I took the job, the first thing that Marvel said to me was don't read the comics. They have nothing to do with this series. The first thing they told him wasn't respect the characters or the lore, wasn't even make something good or we'll fire you. Don't worry about our own IP, which is where all the value is. Just ignore that and make your own stuff. Are you regretting that now? I'd love to know. I also love how the journalists think everyone cares about this stuff, which after having seen it, I don't know how anyone could imagine they did. But they actually ask him, so I have to imagine Don Cheadle asked how long has Rhodey been held captive for by the Skrulls, and he just goes, no, he never asked me that. You've got the journalist going, surely he cared about his own character and where it... No, actually, couldn't be bothered. Every time Selim opens his mouth, another problem happens, which just gets worse the more he talks about it. When he's talking about Ritson's vow to wage war on the Skrulls, he goes, well, you know, maybe Sonya and Gia are going to fix it? Question mark? Maybe. I don't know. Haven't thought about it, mate. Isn't my job to think about. I gave you my half of the dialogue. Anything that happens after the problems that I created, somebody else can sort that out. Because when the journalist asks about the ending, he says there's a montage of paranoia and fear. It's not paranoia. The Skrulls really are invading Earth and trying to wipe out the entire human species. They're not paranoid. It's happening. So fear, in this case, is entirely justified, if not healthy. And he kind of sums it up as, well, we did it because he has to have some opposition when he leaves the series. Ritson could have gone, the Skrulls are welcome here. You don't even understand your own show, do you? No, he couldn't have gone, the Skrulls are welcome here. Wipe out all of Earth. How could they ever be welcome here? Oh, it's okay. I know 5 seconds ago you wanted to kill 8 billion people, but now you can just stay. I'm sure you won't try and do it again. Let's not forget that the million Skrulls have still kidnapped 1 million people and hid them in a basement at the end of this series. So when you're like, the idea is that this battle could go on, it has to go on. The Skrulls have declared war on the entire human species, which is rather impressive considering they've got spaceships and can just piss off somewhere else. Instead, they're like, no, I want this planet in particular. So, you know, Sonya and Gia reconcile at the end. Maybe they're going to fix it. Maybe these 2 strong, beautiful women are going to come in and fix it. Maybe it could just fix everything like they've fixed Hollywood.
You're pure evil.
And you're just another man taking credit for a woman's work.
And so I wrote myself into the story as Fury, ready to get replaced by 2 strong, beautiful type Bs. How is this not just a self-insert of his own life? And after all of that, he pulled exactly what you'd expect. Selim shared that he was worried that he'll end up getting threats over the entire thing. Now, obviously, threatening him over this would be absolutely stupid, and no one should do it. But the thing is, this hasn't happened. He's like, I'm worried that I will do it, and so I'm going into hiding. We're now preemptively claiming victimhood of a possible future that we've imagined in our own head to gain sympathy for a pre-crime that may or may not exist at some unknown time in the future. Someone get Tom Cruise. We've got an investigation for him to swipe through. But don't worry about whatever you thought about the series, because, you know, Emilia Clarke, she had the best day ever filming it, and isn't that what counts? Yeah, we may have wasted $212 million, but at least they got to have fun on the set, and telling the story we wanted to tell. Isn't that what matters? Do you think Disney would agree that that's what matters when you spend $212 million? Because I don't really know how offended that we personally as the audience should be that he doesn't care about our reviews. Because he wasn't offensive, he just said, I don't think it's really my job. I'm just going to make my work, not care about the audience's opinion, and see where the chips land. I'm going to make my story, and if they don't like it, that's on them. I'm like, okay, fair enough. It's not offensive to me. It should be offensive to Marvel, the people who are paying you to make your own story that you don't care if anyone watches. It's always been the surprising factor to me when actors do come out and attack the audience or start insulting them and insulting their opinion in an attempt to shut them up. It's like, yeah, it is offensive to the audience, but it should be more offensive to the people paying for you to do it, because they're the one burning money by allowing you to do it. Every time you tweet or give an interview, it's just like another $1 million being set on fire. And for what? So you can go out and give interviews to the access media who are going to tell you what you want to hear and burn another $1 million. I'm talking about Screen Rant. I love the finale of Secret Invasion. I mean, so did IGN, and they say you ruined Nick Fury. So I'm not sure the bar of their like is actually that high. Or maybe your opinion will change when he's not right in front of you. But Ali Selim Selim says, I didn't want to make the show too psychological. You know, like a spy thriller should be. Everyone's like, where is the depth? Where is the paranoia? Where is anything that should result from the situation you have set up? Well, it turns out he didn't want to do any of the fundamental parts of his television show. Anything that would have actually created the atmosphere or the challenge or the risk. No, he didn't want to do that. No, all their villain wanted to do was get revenge on Fury for hurting him when he was a boy. End of story. When someone came to you with that sentence as the only story of 6 episodes, shouldn't have been a red flag. Although, if you do want a red flag, I don't think there's a larger one than this, when the interviewer says, the president's speech mirrors a lot of real-world overreactions based on fear. Overreactions? The Skrulls wanted to wipe out 8 billion people, the entire human species, and this journalist thinks that defending yourself would be an overreaction. And both of them think that's a reference to the real world. If you think that trying to stop the apocalypse is an overreaction, I'm just glad that neither of you two are anywhere near the hands of power. But nothing will be funnier to me than the director going, oh well, maybe we'll get a season 2. You spent the first series talking about how crap, useless, old and past it your main character was, and you thought you might get a sequel. What's the sequel going to be? Him climbing into a coffin for 6 episodes? It's up on a table and he's got to get a stepladder. How will he cope? Even started talking about how Talos could return to the MCU in the future. Doesn't want there to be any consequences from his series at all. Oh, yeah, Talos died, sure, but, you know, we can just bring him back. Maybe we'll set events before Secret Invasion, or this is just the MCU. There's a multiverse. We can bring him back anytime we want. Is Talos really dead? In a multiverse, is anybody really dead? I mean, they cremated his body in episode 5, but they'll come up with a reason why he's back. Anything's possible. This is a guy who thinks his job is done with the series when he hands it off to the audience. Their opinion of it is entirely irrelevant. Whether they like it or not, if I get a season 2, I'll just get some more money, but what people like, that's up to them. I'm gonna make a show that seems based upon my own life, being past it and old and being replaced in Hollywood, so I'll self-insert myself into Fury and put my own personal insecurities and real-world experiences into the show. I didn't want to make it too psychological because the audiences would be too stupid to understand it, and any risks or events, deaths that may have happened in the series, I will just write over that anyway. There's no consequences to this. At this point, it's like he knows the show sucks, and he just doesn't care. I'm old and past it anyway. You've given me a big check. You can't touch me, folks. There used to be a time when people took pride in their work. It doesn't seem to be here. Because at the end of the day, is it his job to make something people want to see? Is it even his job in Hollywood to make a profit? Or is it just to tell the story that he wants to tell? To do whatever he wants and not care about afterwards? Should he really be held accountable for his own work? Well, I don't know. If everyone's gone to strike and get new contracts, maybe it's time to change things up in Hollywood and tie their wages to the success of the company, tie their wages to profit, to what the audience wants, so that they benefit when the audience benefits, and not before. And really, you have to ask, if you've set fire to $212 million, we're not even questioning whether you should be getting residuals at that point. Should you really be getting much at all? Is it your job to fulfill expectations or tell the story that you want to tell? I don't think anyone will force you to fulfill expectations, force you to make what the audience wants. But if you don't, you won't make any money, and the company should just see that you cost them money, and then they won't work with you again. That's how business should work. That's how Hollywood should work. It's just strange that it doesn't seem to. Maybe as those ledgers sink further and further into the red, maybe it will. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you liked the video. Subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.